Welcome back to Choose Christ Completely. We hope this segment of your time is a blessing to you and your family and deepens your relationship with the Father. I am your co-host, Brandon Kegley, and together with Justin May, we are leading this podcast. So, Justin, topic of the week, because it's been quite a bit that you've done this. Are you feeling better? Because golly, it's been a while since you felt all the way better, I think.
So I'm pretty sure I need to start exercising and taking vitamins because my immune system is shot.
Yeah.
So this week, I didn't technically test positive for the flu, but Shelby did. And so we were having similar symptoms. And so I had the flu, and it's like one of the worst sicknesses I've had. I was, of this whole week, probably 2 days, man, I didn't really even get up. Wednesday, I was up and about, maybe a little bit more, checking on Shelby. Thursday, I can tell you I got up twice. Both times were to feed her, check her temperature, give her medicine, and then I laid right back down. Yeah, so.
Well, how did you prepare for this? Did you have the sermon done by Tuesday, or were you still working on it?
No, I didn't start the sermon until Friday.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. My brain was, well, and even, when I was that sick, and even on Friday, man, I'm trying to read, and it took me 3 times as long as it normally takes me to read. And I remember getting to the second page of the commentary that I was reading. It's like, good gravy, how long has this taken me? So I didn't even start prepping the sermon until Friday.
Okay. Yeah. That's a late one for you.
So it kind of brings me up to a question for both of us as we get started here. What's the sickest you've ever been? I would put this flu B experience somewhere in the top 5 for me. So what's the sickest you've ever been?
Used to. I don't know if I've ever been so sick that it's extremely memorable, but I went to Abingdon High School, or I went to Abingdon School Systems for a while before moving up this way, and E.B. Stanley at the time, the middle school, every single classroom was carpet. So if illness got in, it was terrible to get out. I wasn't always I did some stupid stuff. I remember in 8th grade, we were having a party, and I forgot to ask Mom and Dad for some money because you could buy candy or whatever it was. I really wanted a Mountain Dew. So I bet this kid that he said, you won't lick the bottom of your shoe. I said, if I do, you got to give me 50 cents. I licked the bottom of my shoe. I kid you not, a week later, I was sick. But I had bronchitis a lot during middle school. So I'd spend 6+ weeks sort of with it to kind of go on. But there is probably one time that I don't know why I remember it, but we went to a swim meet and I got some sort of stomach bug, temperature over 100, that sort of thing. And I just remember laying in that hotel floor for all day, all night, sort of thing.
Yeah, I hate the stomach bug. It's one of my least favorite sicknesses.
My dad's too. So I think my dad's thrown up twice, 2 or 3 times in his whole life, and each one of them are memorable because you can hear it throughout the whole house.
Dude, the most memorable stomach bug moment for us was, I don't know who brought it to camp, but someone brought to a junior and senior week of camp the stomach bug. Oh. And, it passed through 2/3 of us. And, every night another kid was getting sick, and we're like, well, there's another one. And I think the second or third day of just continually someone getting sick, we were like, just don't even send them home anymore. It doesn't matter. They're getting better within 12 hours, and then they're ready. They wanted to come back after they got better. And it was like, well, they're wanting to be better. Just let them stay. And I remember getting it while I was at camp. So I had that there, and I was like,
both sides or just one side?
Oh, you both sides. Both sides. And it was like, I would rather do this at home and not here where other people are around me. If we would have done that, then we wouldn't have had camp because, all of the counselors had passed it around too.
Yeah.
So it was the most memorable, stomach bug moment. Now, but the sickest I've ever been was when I was in college. It would have been 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
And the swine flu. Do you remember the swine flu?
I do. I avoided it mostly though.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of everything about it, but I do remember that I caught it at college, and that was the sickest I had ever felt. So yeah, sickness was not fun this week.
How many times have you been sick this year so far?
Oh man,
this is at least the 3rd time, right? Or 4th time?
Yeah, it's the 4th time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have,
I'm still
and
surprised I haven't. I mean, we've been in close proximity
well,
for
on
quite a bit, and I haven't gotten sick yet.
on Monday, I would have been
Yeah.
contagious because I technically hadn't started symptoms,
Mhm.
but I started them Monday night. And so Monday, I would have been contagious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm very surprised you didn't
Well,
catch
I
it.
probably avoided it, but I'll probably pass it on to, Shawnee or something like that. No, yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be my luck, right?
Yeah. I think that was because there was 2 people in our house that were sick. Yeah, that really wore Cindy out.
Oh, yeah.
She
Yeah.
didn't I don't think she's gotten it or caught it yet, but definitely wore her out trying to keep up with the household
Mhm.
and both of us who were
Yeah.
sick
Yeah.
and keeping Theo going
Yeah.
because he was still going to
Mhm.
school. Now, I got up every morning and took him to school except for Thursday. Thursday, I was like, I'm just dead. Like, I'm just staying right here. I can't get him. Cindy had to call in some favors from friends
Yeah.
to go and even pick him up from school. So,
You're talking about your most memorable kind of, when you become a parent, sometimes you just don't have a choice. You just have to do things, right? Stuff like
for,
that. Rory had to have some dental work. And it was like one of those days where last year where it snowed. And so school wasn't in session, but the dental office was. So I woke up, I said, I don't really feel good. And Shawnee said, well, I mean, he's got to go to the dentist one way or the other. So I took him and got there, and then they took him back. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not good. I mean, I barely made it to their toilet. I was just like still standing up as it was coming out. So
at the
that
dentist.
at the dentist office, but I was like, man, it's not so good. So I forgot about that one until you were talking about having to take, Theo to school. But all right, so the kind of leads, who handles the sickness better, you or Cindy?
Man, do I have to confess this publicly? I'm a big baby, man.
Yeah.
I am such a
Yeah.
baby. If I get the slightest feeling of feeling off, I'm like, woe is me.
Mhm.
I'm dying here. So, and she's a trooper, man. I don't know if it's her teacher immune system or I don't know exactly where it comes from, but like, even if she gets something, it just seems like she just keeps going.
Yeah, I think it's the mother instincts, because Shawnee's the same. It's like,
Yeah.
I hold up all right, but, obviously I took Rory to the dentist and then threw up at the dentist office, but not at the same capacity. Yeah. If I'm sick and I'm at home, I'm kind of useless as opposed to, she gets up and still does household chores. I fold.
Yeah, and I always try to go back to the science of it and be like, it's because of our male testosterone. I don't know.
Hey, yeah, maybe it amplifies our illnesses. That's
Yeah,
exactly what it is. It's the
exactly.
testosterone.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Nothing. There has to be some biological reason. Yeah.
Well, last episode we kind of ended and you talked about where you like to go on vacation. You like to go somewhere quiet, unless you're going to Disney.
Yeah.
And that made me think about the next question we should talk about. So what's your favorite Disney ride? Which one's like, man, this is the one I love. I like this about it.
For us, it's hard to pinpoint exactly one because um, each have different memories. Realistically, at some level, rides have to do more with the memories of the ones you share it with than the actual ride itself. But if we're going pure ride, Guardians of the Galaxy is a hard one to beat just because you get music and visual entertainment as well as some thrill side to it. But what about you?
Well, I love Guardians. It's a good one. I like getting on a roller coaster and that roller coaster physically doing something that I've not done before on a roller
Yeah.
coaster. And my family went with us. We had already ridden it once as a family, like my extended family, my mom and dad, my older brother, his family all went. And I always talked up Guardians of the Galaxy because I was like, I promise you, this roller coaster is getting ready to do something that you've not experienced on a roller coaster before. And we won't let the cat out of the bag just in case some of the listeners haven't been on Guardians of the Galaxy. But I can promise you, it's going to do something that you've never done before.
It's not just about what it does, but it's also how it uses the environment to amplify
what it
does. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I like that one as a roller coaster. Now, my favorite one was probably Rise of the Resistance.
Oh, it's definitely the most immersive.
That's
the
what I
most
loved
immersive.
about it
Yeah.
was how immersive feels. Like even when you're going through the line, once you get into the building of the line, it's like they make it feel like we're experiencing going to space and, being captured
Mhm.
by, I forget who the enemy is, but
The resistance.
yeah, being
Yeah, yeah.
captured and all of this stuff. And the first time we went on it, it was such an immersive experience that Theo got like sick to his belly. He
Mhm.
was so nervous
Yeah,
about what was happening.
yeah,
And as a parent, I was trying to like talk him down. I was
yeah.
like, "Hey, this isn't real. Like, this is
Mhm.
just an experience that they're putting on for us." Man, he wasn't having none of it. He was like, "I'm getting ready to puke." And I called one of the guards over and was like, "Hey, we need a bathroom now." And
Yeah.
yeah, he started talking to me in like guard mode and staying in character. And I was like, "Listen, like I don't really care what kind of mode we're playing here, but if you don't want to clean up puke off of the floor, you need to help me find a bathroom." And
They take you
so
backstage for it?
they took
Yeah,
us
yeah.
backstage. And it was so funny. As soon as they opened the door and you step backstage into the little hallway back there, you start seeing the light of outside because there's windows. And almost immediately, you could see the relief
Mm.
on Theo's face
Yeah,
of like, okay, this isn't that big of a deal once he saw that light.
yeah.
And he actually ended up not needing to use the bathroom and we went right back in line and
Not
he was
bad.
fine.
Yeah.
But that's the cool thing about that one, how immersive.
Oh gosh, well, Rebecca, he still feels he knows it's not real, but he still feels real to him every time. So, some of it's tied to his diabetic condition as well, but he always has to pee in the middle of the ride. So after you come out of flying into space and every time we have to ask them, hey, he's got to use the bathroom. Hey, he's got to use the bathroom. This past time we were there, I tell you, we were almost the last people on it. There was only one car behind us, which was kind of interesting. Kind of seeing the cast members start to shut down things. Just
That is
fascinating.
cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What any other rides that are notable that you're like,
Um,
we gotta talk about this Disney ride and show our true Disney adulthood?
Slinky holds a special place in our heart, not just because it's not some sort of crazy roller coaster, but it was always each of our kids' first real roller coaster. We do Goofy, but that was really the first one with any sort of thrill. And if there's a way, I'd show you the video. That year we went with Mom and Dad, and Dad decided to film Beckett, and Beckett's just got this just sort of face. So it just kind of, from an emotional standpoint, it holds a deep connection for us. But
Yeah.
personal big fan of Avatar too, because um, flight of, gosh, I just
Flight of Passage.
Flight of Passage, yeah, has that same immersive feeling that Rise does, and as long as you don't get motion sick, but very immersive environment it creates as well.
Yeah, Slinky Dog Dash is a great roller coaster.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
especially for
yeah.
little. I mean, because it is like it is a thrill for sure.
Yeah, you get some G
It's
forces
not
on the
like,
first thing, and then
but
it
it's
kind
not
of
like you're getting,
thumped and thumped and
thumped
thumped.
and your
Yeah,
head moving everywhere and this kind of thing. It's a very smooth roller coaster.
yeah.
That was one of the ones that my family wanted to do that Ben's family didn't. Ben, my older
Mhm.
brother, we kind of always were like, well, if someone doesn't want to do this one, it's okay. And they didn't really want to do that one. And I was like, this is one you really want to do. Like, trust me, you really
Yeah,
want to do it. But they,
yeah.
they never,
It's the best in the dark. The dark is the best time to ride it.
I think we rode it
It's
at
the
7
best,
this last
the
time.
best time of the ride of the dark. We really enjoy, it's been closed, but Big Thunder Mountain. Big Thunder Mountain at dark's really good too. May change once it reopens again, but we love to ride it during the fireworks because we can ride it 2 or 3 times and still kind of watch the fireworks. I have some pretty cool photos of Shawnee and the boys and taking pictures of their hands with the air while the fireworks kind of displayed. So roller coasters in the dark are fun.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
So the first time Sydney and I went as a family, she did Flight of Passage with Theo, and then
Okay.
we did a rider
Yep.
swap, and she got off of it, and she was like, "This is the worst ride I've ever ridden," and I was like, "Really?" And so once she said that, I was like, "I don't need to do the rider swap. It ain't no big deal. We'll just go on." Well, I called my twin brother Josh and told him I didn't ride Flight of Passage, and he was
Live
a
it.
little bit upset. And I was like, well, we'll catch it again soon. So I wrote it this last time we went. And I told Cindy, I was like, what in the world? Like that ride was amazing.
Yeah.
And I missed
Yeah.
that the last
Yeah.
time. So it is an interesting. I like Pandora as a whole down there.
It needs to be bigger.
Yeah, the
It needs to be bigger.
experience of all the different designs
Mhm.
and the how things reflect and glow in the dark at night. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a really cool spot down
Yeah. Just needs to be a little bigger.
there. Yeah.
Just a little bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the Disney adulting we have for today. I mean, if you're a Disney adult, then you can just tell us what's your favorite ride.
Yeah.
Which
And
one?
if it's Tower of Terror, you can't come back to the podcast.
I can tell you why. Because it's a memory.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
memory that
Sure.
I have tied to it.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my grandparents took us to Disney as
Okay.
a family. I can remember we rode it one time, and it was like one of them moments that you could get off of it,
Right.
around it, get right back, back right on it. And the second time we did it as, all three of the boys, my dad and my grandpa did it again with us. So my mom and my grandma kind of sat out, and then we got back off of it. And us three boys were like, we want to do it again. And my dad was like, I don't think I can. But my Paul, he got right back on it with us, was excited, acted like a kid getting on it. And I'll never forget that.
That's for us, at least, it's not necessarily about the environment as much as it is about the memories we've created, so that is probably one of the cooler things about any theme park in general is you ride it and you can go back to whatever created that memory, similar to smells and that sort of thing. So
this year, I mean, that's a memory that stands out to me so much that this year, when we were doing a budget, Cindy and I budgeted for each of us to get a Spirit jersey. I told her, I was like, if I see any Spirit jersey that has Tower of Terror on it, like that's the one I'm getting it, even if it's the very first day. Turns out it was the very first day we came off of Tower of Terror into the little gift shop. There was one that was themed, and I was like, I'm picking it up. Like, I know I don't have the money to spend now, but I'm still picking it up because that's what I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I guess I'll have to redact my my previous comment.
Why don't you like it?
I just probably because of the memory side. So, when we would go growing up, it was always hot. And I don't ever remember not just sweating profusely on that ride. And so I think that's kind of the feeling that it creates is just this clammy, hot, humid environment. I think that's probably what it's tied to.
It's kind of, and even like the decor and stuff kind of has where it's got spider webs everywhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of got a dingy feel to it too.
I don't know how much we want to spoil, where it's taking you through the Twilight Zone. They didn't have air conditioning there. So, or maybe it was just always broken every time I rode it. So as you're going through that sequence, it's so there's no airflow and it was just miserable.
So when you go, you don't ride it now?
Well, Beckett wanted to ride it one year, so I rode it with him.
Good man. Good man.
And then Rory and Reagan wanted to ride it this year, so rode it with them.
I'm glad.
Again,
I'm glad you have.
If they ask me, I'll do it. Doesn't mean I want to do it, but I'll do it. Now, we do tell them, to, sometimes they want to ride like Spaceship Earth twice. I say no. We've about convinced them finally that Small World is only a one-time ride. We don't have to tell them again.
Small World is a multiple-time ride.
No, it's a one-time.
It is a classic.
It is, but it's a one-time ride. You just ride it one time.
I don't know about this, man. I don't know about this. I think, especially during Christmas time, I didn't know they changed it during Christmas time.
A little bit, yeah.
But it was cool during Christmas time to go through.
Yeah.
But I guess where it was Christmas, the line was longer, so we only it was a one-time ride for us this last time.
Small World was a long ride?
Yeah, well, it's about 20 minutes, which is long for it.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Hey, if it's not a 5-minute wait, we don't get on it.
I cannot believe what I'm hearing, man. I cannot believe this.
Yeah.
You don't like Tower of Terror. You think It's a Small World is a one-time ride. No, it's if you get off of it and you want to get right back on it, get right back on that baby.
No. We don't really do Jungle Cruise that much either.
No, I don't like Jungle Cruise.
I mean, just because there's humor in it, and that's what you have to do it for, and the kids don't understand the humor, so.
Yeah.
And it's usually an hour wait.
It really makes someone mad.
Exactly.
Jungle Cruise is like a cult classic for a lot of people. It's like, if I miss that one the next time, I'm going to be happy that I didn't get on it. Like the jokes are too dad jokes, too cheesy.
Yeah.
I'll pass.
Well, Anyway, we could probably talk about Disney for too long.
Yeah.
And that's not why people are here, Justin.
Oh, well, you're right. You're right. So let's get into our Bible study. Just to give us a quick reminder of what we do 3 different versions with 4 questions. The 3 different versions, we'll start with the English Standard, which is more of a word for word translation. Then we'll read the NLT, which is thought for thought. And then a paraphrase version is the Message. Uh, I think maybe sometimes we say version and just pull them up immediately because Brandon and I know where to go. But if you don't know what I mean when I say a version of the Bible, you can look at the spine of your Bible and it will tell you which one you're reading. It'll have like 3 letters, NIV, NLT, something like that, ESV, that tells you which one you're reading. But, one of the best places to find all of the versions of the Bible is the YouVersion Bible app. And you can in that app, you can change at the top of the screen. You click, there's a drop down menu right beside whatever passage you're looking up. And then you can pull up all of these versions that we use. And then we'll ask 4 questions. So let's start with the English Standard.
Let's do it. Matthew 5:33. ESV. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil.
All right, from the NLT, Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 33. You have also heard that our ancestors were told, you must not break your vows. You must carry out the vows you make to the Lord. But I say, do not make any vows. Do not say by heaven, because heaven is God's throne. Do not say by earth, because the earth is his footstool. Do not say by Jerusalem, for Jerusalem is the city of the great King. And do not even say by my head, for you can't turn one hair white or black. Just say a simple yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one.
And then the Message. And don't say anything you don't mean. This counsel is embedded deep in our traditions. You only make things worse when you lay down a smokescreen of pious talk, saying, I'll pray for you, and never doing it, or saying, God be with you, and not meaning it. You do not make your words true by embellishing them with religious lace. And making your speech sound more religious, it becomes less true. Just say yes and no. When you manipulate your words to get your own way, you go wrong.
And way to go, the Message.
Yeah,
way to
yeah.
go, the Message. Sometimes,
That's about the best summary there is for this.
Oh, I know. It's like sometimes you want to hate it, and then it does something like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, it gives you a undertone what Jesus is talking about, and what the Message says. That undertone is Jesus is like, just because you use religious language doesn't mean that like what you said was correct because you didn't do it. And I do think that, especially when you read the Message, it applies to today's world. Everybody will see each other sick on Facebook or request prayer. Everybody, whether they've prayed in the last 10 days or not, will say praying for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but are you?
Yeah. And we're all guilty of it. And if you say you're not, you probably should do some reflection because you have. But the Message, usually we summarize it, but I don't know how you summarize or, these verses any better than that.
Well, I'll give it an attempt. Okay.
All right, do it.
And then you can be like, well, the Message is still better, John. But if I were to summarize what Jesus is saying, I think the big point he's talking about is, being people who tell the truth and being known so much for a person who tells the truth that you don't have to add phrases onto it that make it seem more real. Like you don't have to add phrases like, I promise, or I swear on whatever, because you're a person who just tells the truth. And I think that's the summary that I would give of what Jesus is talking about. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think it's hard to summarize it different than that anyway, but
I like the Message's summary adds that, even
Yeah,
in the Christian
don't
world, don't add
yeah,
religious
yeah.
words
Mhm.
to make your statement, whatever it
Right,
is,
yeah,
seem more true.
right.
Because what's going on with what these religious people were doing, we read it yesterday. It's in Matthew chapter 23. Jesus talks about it a little bit that makes us understand more what's going behind this passage is that religious people were like using certain phrases, and they
Mhm.
were like, well, if I didn't use that exact phrase when I said or swore on it, then I didn't actually mean what I was saying. It
Right,
was like I was crossing my fingers,
yeah.
And so I think that that's what Jesus is hinting to here. Jesus is like, just because you don't say the exact phrase, I swear by God, doesn't mean that one, you didn't swear by God, right?
Sure.
Because all those other substitutionary words that you're putting in there so that you don't take God's name in vain, so that you may not have to tell the truth.
Right.
All of those belong to God, right? The heavens, the earth, Jerusalem, even the hair on your head belongs to God. And so when you swear and make a promise or an oath, that is on Him.
Mm. I what I like about the message here too, and I think it's hinting at this, in Jesus' words, we just sometimes we don't understand it because it's there are some time period, language here. Too often the world wants to use these words against us to justify whatever their means are. And sometimes we use it to do the same thing. That's what Jesus is really hinting at here is that I can't. If we're going to be a Christian, and you're going to be a true Christian, you can't use his words to justify whatever you're doing. Just the same as that if there's a non-Christian who tries to use his words to justify what they're doing, you got to take that with a massive grain of salt.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Can you think of an example of what you mean when you say that? Like, can you illustrate it how a Christian might use the words that like that? And think of an example that would paint
I,
a picture
I
for
I
me.
don't. Sometimes it's not necessarily the words as much as who they claim to be. So I've come across too many people in the business world who will say they are Christians and use that to gather followers or clients or whatever it is. But when you dig down into what they're truly doing, they're not living up to the gospel terms. They're just doing it for their own self-interest. So less of a specific words, maybe from a mass media perspective on that, and more of, some local people that I know of that have done those things.
So I understand maybe a little bit more based on that. So you're saying that they'll claim things of Jesus not because they actually lived it out.
Right.
They're claiming it because that claim brings some kind of clout with it.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm trying to think of other examples. Can you think of any other examples of how that might work? Maybe everyone else can. I
Yeah. Well,
can't either. I got the flu fog, bro.
I probably could, but I don't know how political we want to get down to
Oh no.
things, because there are pastors out there who will use these words to justify whatever they want their flock to follow. And that is exactly what this is exactly what the Pharisees and Sadducees and all of them were doing, is they were using the words to justify whatever agenda they wanted to push. If you're listening near a church like that, run, because you're listening to the devil. You just don't know it, because that's what they're doing. That bothers me more than the atheist using these words to justify why I should follow whatever, philosophical belief they have. Anybody who claims to be a Christian and uses the words um, is, I think, so much lesser than the one who says I'm not. But why don't you live by these words anyway?
Well, so we're in the middle of these 6 statements that Jesus says he starts this with, he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, and then gives 6 statements. You have heard it said, but I say. And now last week we asked the question, why is it 6? And I did some pondering on it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I'm right, but all 6 of them are how what we do affects other people.
Mhm.
And then you go back and read the 10 commandments, and 6 of the 10 commandments are about what you do affects other people. So the first 3 are all about God, right?
Right. Mhm.
Don't have any other gods before me. Don't make a carven image. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. And then the fourth one is honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. And the other six
Yeah.
are all about how you treat other people, right?
Yeah.
Honor your father and mother. Don't commit adultery. Don't commit murder. Don't lie. Don't covet. I can't remember. I'm missing one. But they're all
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
others. And I wonder if that's what he's doing. And that's the reason why he has 6 of them.
It has to be. It's kind of the cool thing about the Bible still is how real it is. So I don't know. I don't know that Matthew could be classified as some sort of literary genius. Very rare for somebody to be an accounting brain and really have the ability to clue together this literary piece. It's just, I mean, speaking from experience, it's just not in our hemisphere. So, but Jesus being able to go back and reference just those 6, it tells you kind of what I don't think Matthew could have made it up, so to speak.
Yeah. So I think what it's trying to do is the intentional connection
Sure. Yeah.
to the Old Testament,
Yeah.
to Moses,
Well, again,
to the law.
he's going back to that law. Yeah, like you said, and he's those other 4 are easy. They're cut and dry, and I think even in their time, they didn't interpret them any differently. These were always the 6 that had multiple interpretations.
Well, they
from
were
them.
short as far as like even in Exodus 20, like they're short little verses. These 6, like the first 3, like some of those are like a paragraph long. Yeah. So I think that's what he's doing. I'm not sure, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I really think that's what that is. Do you think that could be right?
It's the most logical explanation there is. Jesus had the ability for foresight and hindsight, and could recall, because he was the Word, he could recall, stuff immediately, as opposed to us having to, spend hours trying to figure it out. Yeah. So it's, he sets it up here when he talks about fulfilling the law. I think he just gets Christ came to fulfill the law, and then he gets into these very specific things. So, I mean, it has to be intentional.
Yeah, I think it's directly connected to the second set in the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
All right. That was just a random thought from last week.
See, we don't forget about what we talked last week.
Well,
Most times.
Most times.
All right. So question for you on this one. And when you read the ESV and the NLT, there's verbiage differences.
Oh, yeah.
And in the ESV, it's oaths or swearing. And in the NLT, it's vows. And so I looked up before this, I tried to go back, all right, what is it like to be a Jew? Because again, we have to think about hermeneutics, right? Did I say that one right this time?
Hermeneutics.
Who is this sermon delivered to at that time, and is delivered to Jewish people? So I looked up how do the Jewish people look at oaths and vows, and they do look at them differently.
Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between the two?
Based on what I read, and I could be wrong, but based upon what I read, oath was more something that was direct with God. A vow was something more direct with me and you. So the way I try to interpret this into my thinking was a vow is like a mortgage. I've pledged, quote unquote, to continue to make this payment to this bank. Whereas the oath would have been kind of like, I swear before God that I'm going to give all this money away, right? I don't know if you researched it any or not, but
I did. But
the differences between the two, why does one use oaths and one use
I do
vows?
remember one of the commentaries I read did say, translation-wise, that he liked oaths better than vows. Now, he didn't explain why, but I mean, I'm guessing his reason why was the same as what you just said. I mean, because you are directly talking about promises to God, right? Mm-hmm. Reflect God.
Yeah.
Rather than like the marriage vows that are promises that between people. So I would probably think oaths is a better way to translate that. In fact, I tried to, when I read it yesterday from just the NLT, when one of the times when I said the word vows, I also put the words oaths, promises, so that people would know that there were other words used for that.
Well, something I noticed, and I thought it was interesting, kind of 2 words are used there. We kind of think of them interchangeably, but they weren't necessarily interchangeably 2,000 years ago, which is just fascinating.
Yeah. Well, let's get into our 4 questions.
Right. Well, I guess we get to the 4 questions and I'll lead to, but go ahead. I'll get into that later. Okay. How's that? Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Everybody's sitting on the edge of your seat. First 2 questions. What do you like and what challenges you?
Well, and maybe this is just part of, we talked about in the podcast two ago, I think, but I always liked things like King Arthur and knights and chivalry and that sort of thing. So, part of, and growing up in Southwest Virginia, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And that's the way that it kind of goes around here. And I just like that he highlights that side of it to say, look, you can swear and promise all these things, but it means nothing if you don't actually do it. If you swear on God, or if you swear on anything that God owns, which is everything, then a breaking, we can get into what the swearing is, but the swearing to God meant that if you broke it, let you be killed, essentially, right? I think there was maybe something in the actual Torah where some woman said, if I'm wrong, if I've lied, let my child be killed. Well, they use that as the example because her child was killed. And that's kind of the idea, is that if you're going to swear before God, there are consequences to it. Going back to our very first podcast and Abraham, right? And that's the whole reason Abraham didn't fulfill the covenant, is because if he did, the consequences of his promise to God was death.
Well, when you said that, I kind of think about the book of Acts, Ananias and Sapphira, who are people who in the early church, they sold land and kept a portion back for themselves. And then it's like, then they promise, and yet they weren't telling the truth, and they both died, right? Because of that. Now, we can talk about the reason why there was so severe of a punishment for breaking an oath. Again, it's kind of like the same thing. Like this, they broke their oath. They said, they promised before God, that's what it was, and God punished that.
Yeah. Well, and I think too here, the thing I like is it is easier to be known as a man of honesty than a man of empty promises. That's the message. If you read the headline for it, it's empty promises. You talked about Kathy Truey, but Warren Buffett, who's another kind of legend in the business world, has a saying. I think it's like, a reputation takes decades to build and 3 days to break, or something similar to that. But you have to think at some level that was probably a problem for maybe he was speaking to Matthew at some level in this regard, right? And that, look, you promised to be a Jewish person and you turned on your brothers. Anyway.
Well, I think the reputation part of that is the goal for us as people who represent Jesus. I mean, we should have a good reputation, and a reputation not of someone, and this is hard for me to say because some people would say this about me, we shouldn't have a reputation as, well, they're kind of hard to nail down.
Right.
They're kind of hard to get an answer out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I mean, I think that I told you before, and I'll say it here too, part of your message on Sunday, that you speaking the truth about what you see or what somebody pointed out for you was probably the most powerful part of the message, at least just because it helps tie this idea of a personal side to whatever you're delivering. Look, we go through communion every Sunday, and it's meant to be a reflection time on not just what God's trying to do with us, but what we've messed up for the week. That's kind of like a public communion time for you.
Yeah. It's Rick Warren said one time on a podcast I was listening to, and it was kind of in the beginning of like the COVID era. And, that was a tough time for churches, for preachers, because it was like, no matter what decision you made, you were a horrible person.
Right.
He said in a podcast, and it really stuck out to me. And he said from this point on, he wants to lead from his brokenness, not lead from his rightness.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that is powerful. Yeah. And so,
well, that's what Jesus is calling here to do, right? You can't, as a pastor, you can't get on stage and act like you're righteous and holy because you're not. You can't say it from a religion. So I think, that's a great.
Yeah, I added that element on purpose, intentionally, right? Yeah. Not because I'm trying to tell people to look at me, but I'm telling people, like, look at Jesus in spite of me.
Sure.
And I'm sure there were people in the room who, even while they're hearing me say some of the words I'm saying from stage, are like, is this dude serious right now? He doesn't listen to any of this. It's like, no, I'm trying to magnify Christ and magnify Christ's words and lift them high.
Sure.
and let that be what, learns and grows us and
Yeah.
changes us as people. And I do think sometimes you have to be like, this one's not it for me.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, all of us are going to fail at each one of these commandments at some point, and probably multiple times in a lot of cases, right?
Showing us our absolute need
For
for
redemption.
Jesus
Yeah.
to fulfill these
Oh,
laws.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
him to fulfill all of these
Yeah.
that I could even pretend to be trying to fulfill and do any of them. And so, yeah, I do think it does point to ultimately our need for him.
Well, I think we'll talk about that one until it's blue, but each one of these, that's what it's doing every single time. Is it saying there's no way you can be righteous enough. No way.
Yeah.
And that's what it means for him to fulfill the law.
I mean, the challenging part for me
Was that piece.
is this, like, I need to be a man of my word, right? I
Yeah.
need to be a man who, hey, if I say I'm gonna do whatever it is, I do it.
Mhm.
And I don't put it off, I don't delay. So
Challenging thing for me sometimes is it's not that I'm a politician, but sometimes I will not commit to things. I guess we go back to the podcast on houses, and that's just the Slytherin part of me is I'm not going to commit to it unless I know I can do it. But sometimes I should commit to something way before I'm ready to do it. So give you an example. April this year will be the second year. We mark year 2 that when we decided to come back to CCC. This is the first time in any capacity that I've served, and it's just because sometimes I struggle to create that commitment to something.
well, let's talk about.
Well,
You want to move on? Oh, you got
I
something
had
else?
something else that challenged me. How's that?
Is this? No, wait. Now, is this the previous thing that you wanted to talk about?
No,
I'm still waiting on that one.
Well, yeah, it is. Actually, yeah, it is.
Okay.
So the other thing that challenged me was Paul's words and 2 Corinthians and Galatians. Part of this idea is that we don't swear to God. We don't swear on God. But in both of these 2 verses I'm about to read, he does.
Okay.
So I'll just get to read from the ESV.
Sounds good.
And it's 2 Corinthians 1:23. But I call God to witness against me. It was to spare you that I refrained from coming again to Corinth. And then Galatians 1:20. And what I am writing to you before God, I do not lie. So in both cases, he is actually using an oath to bring home his point. And I'm just going to say it. If I was an atheist, I would use these 3 verses, or the Jesus's words in the sermon, and then these 2 verses to say, hey, the Bible's not real. So how do we wrestle there with what Paul is writing about in those 2 places? And is it wrong? I guess that's the key here. Is it wrong for us to swear
At all.
at all?
So I don't have a great answer that I know of, and if you have one, let me
No, I
know.
got nothing. I got nothing.
I do think you have to go back to your basic principles. I mean, there are basic interpretive principles that you use when you read the Bible. And so if you have a hard question you don't understand, you go back to those principles. And so,
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I only read the ESV here too, so maybe the verbiage is slightly different than what was being communicated.
I think it's great, Bert. I think, the English Standard, if you're only going to read one of them, it's probably the one to read with something difficult like this. But I would think that you have to ask the question of who's the audience, right?
Mhm.
Especially when you think about Corinthians and Galatians, Paul is writing to more Gentile believers, so who have come from polytheism and multiple gods and multiple ways to swear on things. And Jesus is talking primarily here to people who have at least somewhat been Jewish before,
Right.
have more of a Jewish context. And so I think you do see, especially, I do think Jesus says there shouldn't be a need, like there should be no need for people who follow me to swear on things. And I know in the Corinthians one, I'm not sure as much in the Galatian one, but I know that Christians in Corinth who were having these letters written to them from Paul were, They were talking about his authoritativeness. Like, did he have an authority that came from God? He does use some extreme
Yeah.
language
Yeah.
to describe how he does have authoritative
Yeah.
positioning from God. He is an apostle called to the Gentiles. And so should you and I swear oaths?
Well, and
It's an interesting
I
question.
think we also have to be careful with we're called to live as close as we can to Jesus' life as possible. But that doesn't mean that we have this, as you just said, we don't have that authority. So to act like we do would be counter to what he was trying to communicate. So that was about the only way I could reconcile it somewhat, is this idea of what you just said. Paul had authority. I mean, this podcast, while meant for the church here collectively, it won't be recorded for Christians to study hundreds of years from now, right? I mean, so Paul was given a different purpose and calling that probably very few, and that we would ever know personally would ever have. So that was the only way I could kind of reconcile those two. Like, all right, Jesus just said, don't do it. And then Paul did it, and did it in two very public letters. Now, I hadn't thought about the authoritative portion to it as until you had described that.
And I do think that's one of the things, like authority is one of the things you have to consider when you think about your responsiveness to taking a vow. I mean, like, I do think that, I know I've been in court before with a case, and like I had to swear, that was one of the things you just had to do, and to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help you God. And so,
well, I think
I don't know if
probably what he's trying to communicate to here, I think, is still this idea of it's not necessarily wrong to swear, but you cannot take it lightly. It has to be this idea of it being an ironclad agreement. In today's world, I talked about the mortgage side. But you know what? If you don't want to pay your mortgage, you don't have to. They're going to take your house, but you don't have to pay your mortgage. But if you make an oath before God, it should be, you can't break it. And I think that's kind of what he's trying to.
Well, I mean, a mortgage itself has a contract.
Right.
What's a contract?
Right.
If it's not an oath and vow.
Sure.
And so anybody who's ever bought a house has made that contract. And,
right.
I mean, did you go beyond what Jesus's words were when you signed that piece of paper that was literally 40 pages long?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
I do think that there is a point to having simple words.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Simple, straightforward words.
Yes.
You and I as Christians making that our MO and the way we operate.
Right. Yeah.
I do think there will be circumstances in life, maybe for people that for the sake of the gospel message, for the sake of someone else's physical life, that you might have to not just use simple, straightforward words. That you have to talk about super in-depth philosophy that probably gets religious-y words, but that's what's going to help someone come to know who Jesus is.
Right.
So,
well, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand, that if you haven't thought this, it's all right. If that's the case, can you lie and it still be biblical?
And the philosophical question posed in what you just said is like, so say you go back to you're living under Hitler's realm and you're Christian, but you decide to harbor people who are Jewish because you believe in the value of life, and some soldier knocks on your door and asks, is there anyone who's a Jew living here? Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, am I supposed to let my yes be yes and my no be no? Or because of the lack of authority of the person asking, they don't have that good intention. They have the intentions of murder, which are very contrary evil to the gospel message. Would a Christian then in that moment not be a person of truthful, simple words?
Well, hard one to wrestle with.
But yeah, it's definitely a good question to throw out on a podcast then run from it and be like, we don't know the answer.
Hey, but we told you from the beginning we wouldn't know all the answers. So if you have an answer, tell us. If you haven't wrestled with it, it is an interesting thing to wrestle with in the context of Jesus' words here. Simple yes or no is, like you said, if Hitler knocks on your door and says, are you harboring Jews? And you say no, well, you've just violated these verses.
All right. Let's talk about learning about God and learning about others. What do you feel like you learn about God and other people?
Well, I'll start with God first, if that's okay, because I think it's the easiest part here. Still, it's this idea that we can never be righteous or just in his eyes. Without Jesus, there's always a gap, and our interpretation of his words are always going to be wrong.
This might speak into our previous discussion, but like God makes oaths and promises.
Yeah.
God makes promises in Genesis. God says,
well,
I'll be your God and you'll be my people. He makes promises that, you'll be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. I mean, God makes oaths and promises. So,
even Jesus does when he's saying, I'm going to fulfill the law, right? Not even the smallest detail of God's law will not be fulfilled.
And so I think
disappear.
May speak into our previous discussion a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things we learn about God. What about other people? This one's easy.
It is. It isn't much different than anything here is, again, without the boundaries and rules, we're always going to violate them. And if we're not careful, we will use these biblical words to justify our end.
Word trickery was a thing
even
2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Word trickery is a thing today, right?
It's been a thing for as long as words have been around. It started with the devil and the serpent using word trickery to justify the means.
Exactly.
You got to think at some level that Satan knew, God's words. So there probably was more that Satan used in that. He probably was using some language that God had used to Adam and Eve to justify why they should eat it. So it's been around and it always will be around. So.
Yeah, well, and then you watch the pattern of the people God chooses. It's really interesting because, Abraham will lie, right? Abraham's going to lie about his wife not being his wife.
Right.
Remember, he does it a couple times.
Yep. David.
And then you keep going down his line and Jacob and Esau. Read that story in the book of Genesis. If you ever thought about word trickery, Jacob uses word trickery like crazy against Esau.
Yeah.
And so,
and then David does it with, when he wants Bathsheba. He sends him in the front because he's the best warrior.
Right.
That's warrior. Yeah, Uriah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so it's a thing. I do think that, especially me, dude, sometimes I'll hear someone say something and like light bulbs go off in my head and I'm like, I don't believe a word you're saying. Like, I don't believe a word you're saying.
Well, we've talked about a little bit the house. Discernment, and part of, I guess, what Jesus is calling us here to do is to have discernment with who we interact with as well. Just because somebody says it doesn't mean that it's true. For our generation, just because you wrote it on the internet does not make it true. And maybe for the generation coming up, just because AI says it does not make it true.
Yeah, just because you read it somewhere doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
All right, anything else you want to share before we
No, I tell you, I talked about it a little bit before when we were kind of talking before, but I'm looking forward to the next one. I think there's some fascinating things to kind of think through with the next one, especially in the context of the world we live in and all the things that are going around us.
So what Brandon is saying
Come
is
back.
Stay tuned. Come back to the podcast.
Yeah.
But come Sunday morning, we're going to talk about it in the sermon.
Yeah.
You know what we're talking about. You can pre-read it and pre-think through it and then come.
Yeah. And for what it's worth to the listeners, Justin and I are not talking about it beforehand. So I'm going to see what he has and then see if it's different than what I read. I think we'll see. But I think, again, we're talking about oaths and what I was just kind of communicating. What we're about to talk about is going to be one of the most used words against you, one way or the other. So if you haven't been to church yet, this will be a great time to come. And if you haven't invited buddy, I say bring him because it's an important topic.
Sounds great. So just a couple of housekeeping things. If anybody has any questions, we'd love for you to fill out the link that's in each of the descriptions wherever you found our podcast. We'll answer any questions, talk back and forth with you, and help you get to know us a little bit better and the Word of God. So we'd love questions. Please send us a question.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to start sending out kind of automated email when they actually come out. So if you haven't done it, submit your email to the church. That way it's been released. With everything going on recently, it's not been on schedule, but that way at least it's out.
Lord willing, it is on schedule now.
He did talk about it during the sermons.
That's right. All right. Well, will you close us in prayer?
I'll do it. Lord, we thank you for everything you provide us. We thank you for not allowing what we do to to be what brings us closer to you, but allowing Jesus to fulfill that for us. We ask that anybody that's listening, that they take those words to heart and work to apply that in their lives. And again, we thank you for all that you do and continue to do every day. In your name we pray.
Amen.
Yeah. Go choose Christ completely.